Welcome to another edition of Leadership Radio. And my name is Kerry Southorn, your host. And we'd like to welcome from San Antonio, Texas today, the sage of leadership, Dr. Virgil Schmidt. Welcome to Leadership Radio, Virgil.
Thank you, Kerry. Good to be here.
Let's talk some leadership.
Sounds good.
You betcha. And my question for you today, or the topic of conversation, is that we hear a lot through this pandemic time about the new normal. Everybody says that the old normal's gone and the new normal is here to stay. But Virgil, when it comes to leadership, is there really a new normal? Or is there something timeless about leadership?
Well, Gary, I don't think that there's a new normal when it comes to the principles of leadership. My perspective is they endure over time. Leadership is always the same. Circumstances will definitely change, and environments might have to change, etc. The way in which you apply the principles may need to be adjusted. However, the principles are always the same. For example, when we look at this pandemic, all of the leadership that I see employed by anybody in authority is, for the most part, based on fear.
Right.
And people motivate people by fear. I mean, it works, but it's a poor motivator. The best leaders, the most reliable leaders, the most honest, those that will be followed long term are those who find other ways to motivate people, to create a healthy environment, or as we say, a healthy culture.
Right.
Where people respect each other and where they prop each other up and support each other and do whatever to move an organization along in its development. That's a different approach, a different style, but much more enduring.
Yes.
You know, when we look at the fear factor that we see now, people are just anxious. I mean, they're fed up. At least here in Texas, we are getting really tired of all of the fear mongering that's going on at various different levels. And so now there's a reaction, and that could be predictable because it's a poor principle for leadership. That's not a new normal. I can't see that working very long or very well in any context before you've got a rebellion on your hand or a revolution. So anyway, I'm of the opinion that the principles of leadership are enduring. They stand the test of time.
I really appreciate that. And I know you've often said, as does John Maxwell, who might be called the dean of leadership, leadership thought and leadership speaking, but I've heard you say often that leadership is influence.
Yeah, very definitely. Nothing more, nothing less, says John Maxwell. So, you know, you just learn how to become a better influencer. And you can't do that if you don't respect the people and if they don't respect you. So you work to earn respect. You develop relationships. And you don't rule from your office with a title. I mean, it might work for a while, but it's not going to last before you got a reaction that's negative. So you want to be positive and move forward with a goal and something that inspires. And then you'll find people will follow you. So
absolutely. Like I've used the little example before. You know, so many people say, if you want to be a leader, find a parade and get in front of it.
Yeah.
But I don't know. I don't think you'd call that leadership, Virgil.
No, I would call that an opportunist. Uh,
That's a good way to put it. But real leadership,
yeah,
I believe, is going to the back of the parade and turning that sucker around.
right.
That
Absolutely.
takes a real leader to
That's right.
influence people to the point where they will turn and come your way.
Absolutely.
And that that takes a lot more skill. That takes a lot more patience and a lot more understanding of the people you're dealing with than just sending out an edict and expecting people to fall in line.
Oh, absolutely. You know, and we've got a couple of classic illustrations of what not to do in leadership here in the States with some of the governors of New York and California and Michigan and places like that, where they are just giving mandates and edicts, and the people are starting to rebel. They're
Right.
starting to react negatively to that, and you know, that's just not leadership at all. That's just a poor example of these people abusing their offices.
Wears pretty thin, pretty fast.
It wears real thin, real fast.
And
Absolutely.
you and I have both been in the business world, and I know you've had extensive experience in the nonprofit sector. And we've likely both worked for both type of bosses, both type of leaders.
Yes.
The ones who led by example and by inspiration, and then the ones who tried to lead by fear or authority or edict.
Right.
And there's a big difference in how they make you feel and
Oh, yeah.
how you perform.
Oh, when you create a loyal following, the people will die for you. Um,
Right.
they'll work so hard, they'll bend over backwards, they'll do what they have to because they want to please you. That's a real leader.
Yeah.
And he values them, and then they in turn bring value to him. It's just the way it works. It's just the way the human heart is, and it's just it's an example of a leader who understands himself and understands the people he's working with, and then he makes decisions on that basis and provides a culture and environment whereby he gets to enjoy the fruit of his labor. It's a neat thing, actually. Leadership is dynamic. Leadership is fun. You know, John Maxwell always says everything rises and falls on leadership. And that's fundamentally true, has been throughout human history.
And the new normal isn't going to change that.
It's not, it can't.
There's no other formula.
No, absolutely.
You know, I listened to a speaker one time, and he was a professor at a university down in the South, maybe not far from where you're at there. But he talked about a student who came to him and said, Professor, if I hear you say in class once more that leadership is top to bottom, inside out, and that's the way you change organizations. He says, if I hear you say that once more, I think I'm going to be sick. You know, is there not some other way to change organizations or change societies other than top to bottom, inside out? And the professor paused for a moment, and then he said, indeed, there is one other way to change organizations or societies. And the student says, I knew it, I knew it. What do you call that? And the professor said, revolution. So either, and that's how important leadership is.
Yeah,
Either
yeah,
we change society and improve it and build on it and grow as organizations and as a people from the top down,
right.
or there's all too many ideologies and countries and enemies that are all too willing to help us change it from the bottom up.
Oh man,
And we're seeing that.
yeah, we're seeing that here in our on stateside, we're seeing that being dramatized across the board in a really dramatic way.
Absolutely.
Unbelievable, some of the stuff that we've observed that I have never personally had to witness, but it's happening now, and
Right.
it's costing a phenomenal amount of money, and that's not counting everything else that it's requiring. So I totally agree, and we have not seen on the political scale good leadership for the most part,
Right.
all across, and they're buying into that revolution concept.
Even business leaders, which
Even
at one time you would have thought the corporate world
yeah,
would be a firewall in a sense from that kind of thinking. And yet the corporate world is going woke today too.
they are, and it'll be very interesting to see the NFL and the NBA. It'll be very interesting to see what their seasons look like. They now are planning, a boycott in November, and it'll be interesting to see how effective. I do know that the viewership on television is down by a significant amount already, which I think is just indicative of what is to come.
Yes.
But again, that's all built on leadership.
Sure. And it's falling on leadership, the lack thereof.
It is absolutely, absolutely. These players that make phenomenal salaries that are unimagiable,
Yeah,
and
outside of you and me, there's not too many that make that kind of money.
you're absolutely right. So to see them react the way they're reacting, my gut just says, why don't you go to the country that you like and try to do there what you've done here,
Right.
and
Right.
come back and report in a couple of years, see if
See if you'll stand up for the anthem again.
yeah, like
Yeah.
we're crying out loud, and so anyway, I can get off on that tangent. I don't want to get off on it, but it illustrates the rise and the fall of leadership. It indicates that leadership, in professional sports has succumbed
Right.
to the lack of leadership.
Right.
And if that's the new normal, it's not working.
Boy, that is for sure. And just while you were talking there, it crossed my mind that if there's anything that we would call the new normal when it comes to leadership, is that it's more important than ever before.
Mm,
That's maybe the new normal when it comes to leadership. The
right,
principles are the same,
right,
but the importance and the priority that needs to be placed on leaders and the development of new leaders and the encouragement of existing leaders through the auspices of Leadership Radio, of course, is never been greater.
yes.
The importance has never been greater.
Oh no, you're right, absolutely right. There's a dearth for that, and I would suggest there's a craving for that.
Mm-hmm.
In fact, I think it's going to reach this stage at some point where if we don't get a handle on this, that somebody will rise to the occasion and will become a dictator on a global scale, because we all crave following somebody that we believe understands the nature and the culture of life and will
Right.
navigate us through it.
And so some charismatic personality comes along, even more charismatic than you and I. And
Doesn't take much.
and there's been this void of leadership, this vacuum, I guess is the word I'm looking for. And it would really make for fertile ground for someone like that to come along. So we need to really focus on the whole topic of leadership and developing leaders. And we certainly encourage anyone who's doing that.
We need to influence the influencers.
That's right. Leaders helping leaders build leaders. Well, that's great. Virgil, sorry, didn't mean to cut you off, sir.
No, just all I'm just saying, it's, it's incumbent on us, our generation now, to pass the baton to the next, but stand behind in support and encouragement and instruction in whatever level or capacity is required. But that's how the world functions and operates. And so we're at the stage in life now where we can pass that on to others who are coming behind us.
Right. Absolutely. Good words of encouragement, and we appreciate that. And we look forward to our next edition of Leadership Radio. And we want to leave our parting word, as usual, to our listeners, and that is, tell it like it is, say it like you mean it, and live it like you say it.